There are bridges, bridges in the sky, they are shining in the sun. They are stone and steel and wood and wire, they can change two things to one. They are languages and letters, they are poetry and all. They are love and understanding, and they're better than a wall. They are languages and letters, they are poetry and all. They are love and understanding, and they're better than a wall. There are canyons, there are canyons, they are yawning in the night. They are rank and bitter anger, they are all devoid of light. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and so foreboding, and they're oh so very wide. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and so foreboding, and they're oh so very wide.
And thank you, Bill Staines, for Bridges, that song,
That wonderful
Bridges.
song. Yes.
They are dark and so foreboding, and they're oh so very wide. That's Bill Staines and his song, Bridges.
That's what the bridges are trying to transverse.
Right,
Those
they're
big
trying-
caverns and those big gaps
Yeah.
in understanding.
And as Bill said, they're
instead of putting up walls and of wire and everything else to keep people out, like what's happening in Turkey now, we should be building bridges between countries, doing just the wrong things. And it's not because people are evil, it's because they're afraid, and they're afraid because they've been conditioned to be afraid when there's something different.
right. There's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. Welcome to Bridges Programming. This is World Call In, and we are here Wednesdays, any Wednesday morning from 9 to 10 or 10 to 11 or whatever we have to find time to move into this programming that we try to help people build a better world. This is a humanitarian station called Bridges Programming, and then we are our big promotion here, our big push spot is called the HREM.org, Human Renewable Energy Measure. We do a Sunday morning show called Sunday on the Front Stoop with Dennis Carius and Susan Comont and myself. And
You're Jeff Beller.
And I'm Jeff Beller. And we'd like to get as many people to do humanitarian programs as possible. Today we're going to talk about Bucky Fuller, which we always love because Bucky was a really forward thinker and he's written so much good stuff, and they sort of suppressed Bucky Fuller, just like they suppressed many, many people in this world on mainstream media.
Just imagine that he's sitting here between us.
Yeah, Bucky's great.
And he's like a third person.
And the person who actually is sitting here, but he's not physically in the building and you don't see his face, is Dennis Carius. Hello, Dennis.
There's his voice. So he's another person who's
sitting
with us.
And I think he's refreshing.
I
think he's going to refresh his screen so we can see if he's watching the program here or not. Right now, I don't. Meanwhile, I haven't seen if he's on the screen yet. But anyway, we're going to talk about Bucky Fuller. And on the news today, Susan and I had the luxury of speaking in Split, Croatia at a conference where there was about 178 countries. We were one of 20 presenters, and it took place in Split, Croatia, maybe 3 years ago.
It was an energy currency conference.
Right, and we landed in Germany, and we took a train from Germany up down across to Split, Croatia. We went through Austria and
Serbia.
Serbia.
I think that, yeah.
We went through quite a few countries into Croatia.
Right.
And it's very mountainous there. So when we heard that the refugees that are coming from Syria are hoofing their way over to Croatia, we realized, wow, it's rocky, it's mountainous, it's very sparse. I mean, even the train had chug, and we were burning a lot of brakes up on the train. You smelled them as you went down.
Going around the switchbacks in order to get up, and then of course down
the
down the
mountains.
mountain, then up the mountain again to go back to Germany.
So it really was an interesting trip.
It doesn't really flatten out, and it actually flattens and sort of dries out as you get closer to the coast. So the terrain is not, welcoming, anywhere along the way until you get to the towns that are right on the coast. Amazing.
But anyway,
The hardships that these people.
Split Croatia is on the coast on the Asiatic Sea. Is that?
Oh no, the Adriatic.
Adriatic Sea, yeah. And
Adriatic.
it is beautiful, and it's pretty much tourist.
Right, and I don't think they're going to welcome refugees.
It's a
from
small
Syria.
town, and I think there's going to be a problem with that.
But they're allowing safe passage through their country. They're not blocking people from passing through the country. So,
But anyway, this
whatever
is,
that means.
So the bottom line here is, why are they
It
running
means move
away?
along. Move
Why are they
along.
running?
Keep on moving, right?
Why are they running, and why are they having to leave their country? And the answer to that is they're being shot and killed and things because of economic reasons, and the economics is the problem. And we think
the politics is extremely confusing and meant to be that. Who's supporting who's doing what. It's incredibly difficult to understand. If you're trying to understand it from those terms, and that's the terms that we're being told to understand it by, not by the compassionate terms, which should be the immediate reaction to this kind of tragedy. It's the largest emigration from a country since the Rwandan genocide.
right, which 6 million people were killed, and all these things, all these movements are mainly because of economics. Even back in the Roman Empire, when theoretically Moses pushes people through the waters and they left and they let my people go because they were slaves. That was about the slaves were economics.
Yeah.
And to this day, it's the same thing. It's a form of slavery. And by the way, people, if you don't think that you are in slavery in the United States, but you have been conned so heavily.
It's a pleasant type of slavery for a lot of people, but some people it really is not.
You are so well conned. You're putting your children to slavery the minute you get them an education that you had to pay for. Education should be absolutely free. Education is the form of mind, and how much you can learn. Different minds have different abilities on different topics, not better or worse. Everybody, a ditch digger we need ditch diggers, and that human being should have no worse a life than someone who's a brain surgeon. Everybody has their own niche, but no human being should ever have to beg for food or shelter. If you work harder, you get more. We're not saying socialism or communism. We're not saying that at all. We are saying that humanity, all human beings have to have their basic needs met. Their education, food, and shelter for about 1 hour of their labor. And their labor could be either a ditch digger or a brain surgeon. I'm using those two because one takes a lot of education and one doesn't require a lot of education. So the education is also what you choose to do with your life. I mean, that's a choice you make, and if you work more hours in whatever you do, you would get more. So it's not socialism, but no human being should ever have to beg for food or shelter. And education is, the more you're educated, the better off your community will be. And for the first time in history, we can prove it. Not that it's, I'm being religious, even though the Pope is saying the same thing. But I'm saying to you that somewhere in the Bibles, they always say all men are created equal. I'm sure they meant women or humanity in that case. And we have to, and this could be heaven on earth. Well, it could be, but this is the first time in history that we can say that we know how many energy units you need for food and water. And we all use the same amount of those energy units, more or less. We all live about 80 years of age, more or less. And That's measurable, and we need shelter, which can be measured depending upon where you are. Basic shelter can be measured in energy units. So that's the baseline. That's our start point. That's an agreed start point by all of humanity. Once we have that agreed start point in position and understand it, then you allow that to be developed from that start point. Because without a start point, without knowing where you are starting, you don't know how to get somewhere or how long it's going to take. And again, time for humanity is very important because we know we have 80 years of life. Limited. And the same thing holds true with all life on this planet, but as a species, we are able to measure it. I don't think a squirrel or a bird measures it. They have a different thinking process. They have subconsciously, they migrate when it gets colder to warmer climates. Squirrels know they have to get in a certain amount of food and stored for the winter. They know that. They don't have a clock. They have a different thinking process, a different mind. But we as a species have a mind, and our species is going extinct. And if we keep on killing one another like we're doing, and someone told me that there's some nuclear bombs pointed on the United States recently, and they can go get as far as Hawaii. Well, and they say we have to retaliate, and I'm saying, and I think it was Korea. They said that was, I heard, but the point is, why does Korea have nuclear missiles pointed on our country? There's something wrong.
Well, they feel that North Korea feels we're a threat
to them. So the reason why we're a threat to them,
justifiably.
Well, we are, and that's an economic threat. And then we hear President Obama saying, well, we need to cooperate with other countries so we can get along. But in the very next breath, he says we have to get educated so we can compete. Well, either you're going to compete with other countries in competition, and when you compete to a certain degree, you're competing
the assumption is scarcity.
Right.
And that's your survival of the fittest mentality then.
But if you cooperate with other countries, like you mentioned in the previous statement, then you work together so everybody has abundance, so everybody doesn't need to fight with one another. And this is what the Pope is saying. The economic system is not working. It's simply not working. So we need to get this resolved. But anyway, Bucky Fuller, Susan's got some notes, I think, on Bucky. I'm not sure if she did them because we had a tight week, but
no, I did. I read forward a little more, and
she's been reading from a book that we sort of lost, so she's got to take it out of, she's taking it from memory. But but anyway, she's written some notes up on this book called
Critical Path,
and. We got to see if we can find it or pay for it or something. We need to. Yes.
Oh, good. All right, go right ahead. Read the summary.
So, for some reason or other, hold it, Dennis. For some reason or other, you're not coming through on our speakers.
Oh.
No.
Uh-oh.
I hear you.
We hear you, but
I hear you, but you're not coming through on our speakers.
On the program.
On the program, for some reason. I don't know why.
The new.
I don't know why, but you're not coming through, and I got to see if I can remedy that.
Oh, let me read the summary then.
Okay, right. Dennis said hi.
I'll read
what
the
I
summary.
could probably do, Dennis, is actually if you're not coming through, I can unplug the earphones from you, and maybe you'll come through the speaker system. Let me try that.
Shall I read the interview?
Yes, you
summary
read the interview while
you're
doing that.
fooling with the technology? Okay, here's what Dennis was trying to read earlier.
Good. Thanks, Susan.
What is the Know-How Club? How did the American bankers get control of Arab banks? When? What is the arrangement now? Why did he call the CIA Capitalisms Invisible Army? How did our best science and technology get converted into, quote, accomplishing the killing of ever more people at ever greater distances in ever shorter time, unquote? Why? So that's the different questions that we might be able to get to today.
Okay, Dennis, now can you say something?
Something.
Yeah, we're picking you up now.
I can say more than something if you want.
Okay, now for some reason or other you are working without echoing, which I think is amazing.
That's great.
Good.
Maybe it's
Without
something.
echoing?
I don't think you're
Yeah.
echoing. I think,
How will we know?
well, because he's here in real time.
Okay, yeah, it's just like when we play the music
Right.
on the boat.
Great.
All right, we'll try it out. We'll see if you echo when we hear the rebroadcast, I guess.
Okay, so this is a, a very interesting Go ahead.
Did you hear the summary?
Yes.
Okay.
Why did Bucky call the CIA Capitalisms
Invisible
Army? Wow.
Right, isn't that something?
Yeah.
And
That's what CIA stands for. Okay, got it.
Yeah, see that? Capitalism's Invisible Army. He feels that they go into a country and foment discontent among people who, are being oppressed by whatever situation or economic, political, or whatever that they're living in, and then manipulate these groups, toward an end that is, as we're asserting, mostly always has economic goals, and either to overthrow or appear to be overthrowing the existing government just to create chaos in the country, so that other types of influences and forces can come in and be powerful within that country, like what's happening in Syria now. Nobody really understands. I mean, I've read a lot about it, and I still don't understand all the players and what the heck they're doing and how they connect with each other. And we're even being told that through other countries that and through our country, that we're not really behind this or that, or but we're over there dropping bombs anyway. What is our goal? Are we just all trying to just checking it out from a distance and seeing, okay, where can I get my a piece of this action? Once the people
There's money involved.
Yeah.
There's money involved not only in the war, but in taking the natural resources from every country.
And they are in strategic territory there.
To move oil.
Moving oil, right,
and,
out of Saudi Arabia.
And our song, by the way, ending with Alien Folklife's made for us, is called the Energy Song. We always end with that song because energy is our multiplier for our labor. And without energy, our economic system sort of stops. So energy is the key issue for our labor.
And ever since the end of World War II, this has been the economic game, to own the ownership of the mines and the metals. It's metals and mining capitalism, owning of and this is still to this day the main the push of large corporations. I don't know if you can even call them corporations anymore, because I would call them corporate nations. They are autonomous. They pretend to be part of a country, but they're not. They're countries unto themselves. They are virtual, metaphysical countries that own what is necessary to keep the economic system running.
And they pay for our politicians worldwide.
Right, and they manipulate the
politics. They pay for the media worldwide. And we talked about there's running for president in this country, there's a very wealthy guy, and what he does is he makes sure that the booze flows. He makes sure that the food is good when he has his own conference, and he literally controls the media with his money. And that's how the money or the economic system's controlling all of the politics in the world, and it has no bearing on anything that is good for humanity. Its bearing is strictly set up so it kills people and makes more power and control for the very wealthy. The money is the form of the power and control. The economic system must be changed. And the reason for our programming, if you could understand why we're doing this, it's really hard to wrap your mind around this, is we feel as though if the economic system was based on physical things like we all have to eat, we all have to have water, we all have to have shelter, and we should not have to work to get those basic needs for more than an hour a day with today's technology. Worldwide, this is not just for US, it's worldwide. In Kenya or in Africa or in Croatia or wherever you are, no human being, for the basic needs, not your wants, mind you, your needs, that everybody's needs are exactly the same. To stay alive, you require food, shelter, and education. 1 hour, because of technology, should give you your basic needs. Now, your wants are different. Your wants may, I want to work more, and I want to have a car, or 2 cars, or 4 cars, or 5 houses, or whatever you want. No one's stopping you from working. No one's saying you shouldn't work, even though I have a friend of mine who calls himself a socialist. He's not a socialist, he's a capitalist, but he refuses to look in the mirror and see that. He said, well, why should I allow you to work? You're going to take my job away. No, that's not true. You work as much as you choose to work. And once you work, you have a basic understanding that all humanity has to have their basic needs met for 1 hour. It doesn't mean someone else can't work 10 or 20 hours. They're always going to be 1 hour work for somebody, and they'll always have their basic needs met. If they want more, they can work harder. This is not socialism or communism or capitalism. It is strictly humanitarianism. You want, it's not Marxism. That's what people call me Marx. Not only do I look like Marx, but I believe labor is a big, big item. Certainly labor is a big item. But without a measurement, you don't know how to get there. So this is not Marxism, socialism, or capitalism. It is humanitarianism. No human being should ever have to work more than an hour for their basic needs met, and it could be measured.
And an interesting thing when you're talking about Marx and socialism, the closest this country got to socialism was between the 2 wars, and as a result, as a reaction to the Great Depression, because Roosevelt had to do something to help the people get back on their feet, and people were completely demoralized by the banks failing, and so he created the Citizens Corporation, CCC, Citizens. They went
he put people to work.
He made jobs for people so that they could work. The whole national park system was created during that time.
And roads were built.
And other types of the work progress, WPA was created, and these were all and this worked, and it worked so well that the ramifications of that. There were all these people, unions started to develop, all the things that assert the rights and the dignity of the rest of the population, not just the 1% that will benefit from capitalism, which is that's what it does. It uses the resources of all the lives that are the majority of the population and their work in order to just advantage a small percentage, because that is the dynamism of that system. But after the Great Crash and the Roosevelt's efforts in this to bring the country back on its feet, and then of course getting and aiming eventually all of our science and technology toward the next war, toward World War II, and getting the armaments built up and et cetera, and to the point when we entered that, and of course the development of atomic weaponry over that period too. This was all possible because he was empowering everyone, the most of the population, and there were a lot of new wealth was created that way. A middle class emerged, the unions emerged, and a lot of people did very, very well.
And we have the bottom line here is because of the closeness of that, the United States had a great quality compared to the rest of the world. We had a good quality of life.
Right, during that time. Building up to
and then other people said, well, we got to go to the United States because they got a great quality of life. Their streets are paved with gold. Well, no, their streets were paved with a good quality of life. We shared our technology as best we could. And I'm suggesting that we did that maybe by choice or maybe by plan or maybe by luck, but it happened.
Well, it happened because they had to recover from the Depression.
Right.
And then, but then, you know, the lawyer capitalists, the companies they work for, they didn't like this, and they said, well, look, we're not supposed to like socialism. We're getting like these socialist countries in Europe. I mean, this is not, and Buckminster Fuller describes this very well in his chapter, Legally Piggly. But anyway, I just wanted to make the point that this was offensive to the people that had been traditionally in this country controlling everything. And they could see the need for it, but only to a certain point. And then they started to whittle it away, and that's where the Know-How Club comes in. It's a new language of science and technology, and it's kept exclusive, and they grab what they figure are the best minds from every college, and they put them into the comfortable either university or corporate environment where they're encouraged, like you know, fattened pigs or whatever you want to call it, to continue to produce. I mean, it's almost like the way they put you know, chickens in cages, and they want the egg, you know, so they're going to keep feeding that chicken, and it'll keep laying the egg, and you know, but don't let it out of the cage, because you never know what that chicken's going to do, you know, if it starts to do what it wants to do, you know, and interact with other chickens, or, you know, and in this case, scientists. Well, but they keep everyone very content, and giving them everything they need, and saying, you're the best minds, you're the geniuses, we need you to,
and we're going to fatten you up,
and we're gonna make sure that you have the you know, a comfortable, secure
but there's something radical. I was talking to my attorney yesterday as a friend. If
you cooperate.
I was talking to my attorney yesterday, and I said, you know, he's a religious guy, and I said, you know, there's something radically wrong with this system. We know that most of our kids are working hundreds and hundreds of hours to stay alive because they're paying off their student loan, and then we have our other friends who are, their kids, they're not poor, but they're into drugs and booze. And every family we know who has, you know, who's affluent, not just the poor, we're into drugs and horrendous things that in this country, not just, you know, all over it. And look around you, you can see it. So we know there's something radically wrong with the system. I forgot where I was going with that. But the point is, there is something wrong, and you know that. You don't have to even discuss that. We know it. But we have to be able to look in the mirror and face up to it. And there's
Dennis has a good example too.
Go ahead.
Dennis, this is a good example of what you're talking about right now, where we have, when you talk about HREM, not just food and shelter, but even education. And we are in a country where we do have free grade school and free high school. Even if parents are unemployed, the children can still go to grade school and high school. But what's really sad, just to give a good example of what you just said, Jeff, is that when a child becomes 18 years old, not only is that the age when they graduate from high school, it's also the age where they can go overseas in the military. And then when they say, well, look, it's so expensive to go to college, then they're told, well, you can afford it if you go over to the Army or the Navy or the Air Force for 4 years. Don't worry about it. You can afford it. Well, there's an example of what you're talking about, Jeff. Some of those kids, they come back home after 4 years over there, they kill themselves. The rate of suicide is so high because they can't believe what they did over there they were told to go in that house and do that, and they said, they come back home with their family, and they say, "Oh my God, I can't believe I did that."
This is a very
Isn't that a good
important.
example?
This is a very important point you're making, Dennis, and they've been sacrificed to the golden god of economics. These young people, even before they've had the ability, the possibility of deciding what they'd like to do with their lives. May I say something before
Yeah, go ahead.
because I have to continue with, because that's the point. Yes, we allow our youngsters to go through elementary, middle, and high school, and essentially get their reading, writing, and arithmetic down, and a little bit of other things too, but not in depth to the point where they're yet part of the know-how club. Now, you get in the know-how club by being able to afford to go to the higher education and get into the quote secrets of science kind of situation. And these things should not be exclusive. This language should not be exclusive. The language of higher math, the language of science. These are things that all of our educated once people are these youngsters are have their basic education, they should be able to choose to get more education and not have to have to pay for this education, just like they had education. All the education should be free. That's very, very important. Let me read what Buckminster Fuller said about the know-how.
Bucky.
The whole quote, the whole of atomic quote, the whole of atomic development was know-how. Know-how. Scientists had the know-how, and anybody without their technical information could not even speak their language. The know-how club, monopolized by lawyer capitalism, was a very tight club, and still is, I would assert. Furthermore, the non-member 4 billion plus human beings on planet Earth knew nothing about the invisible, micro, macro, non-sensory, tune-inable reality. Large private enterprise had now hired all the know-how scientists and engineers. They seemingly could keep the public out of their affairs forever. There was an earnest and concerned battle by a few responsible scientists to keep the Bureau of Standards intact, but they were overwhelmed. Henceforth, all science must be done by the private corporations themselves or under their subsidized university, college, and private laboratory work. To appreciate the extent of this know-how monopoly of the big corporation, one need only look over the wording of the scientist and engineering help wanted advertisements of the big corporations and the many pages of the New York Times Sunday business section or of their counterpart publications in other big cities. Very interesting. You can see, what the job descriptions are asking for. Can you even understand the language of the job descriptions? That's very interesting. But
well, somebody told me what they did the other day, and they said, "I'm a."
Right.
And I said,
"What the heck is that?"
Said, "What do you do? I know that's your job description, but what do you do?" And the bottom line is she makes the decisions on who the insurance company pays or not.
Right.
That's after
all
that was.
Right.
She's got the legal technical business. They look, you're not going to get paid for that because that's not part of the insurance's job.
Right.
But she had a title that you couldn't figure out what the hell it was about.
Right.
And then when you talk to an attorney, they say, well, you don't have to do that. No, you don't legally have to do that, but morally you may want to do that.
Yes.
So where does the morals come in to the and if they say, well, we can pass a law that you're not following the rule of law because therefore we're killing you by buying your stuff and taking your natural resources, we're polluting your water, we're polluting your air, and we're killing you, but we're legal about it, so that must be okay.
Well, the interesting thing about that too is that, if you do decide to proceed with what you think is morally, correct in your life, oftentimes the legal aspects of your country will slowly destroy your life.
Right, because
you are not cooperating with, okay, you're not getting as a, let's say, for example, you're not getting the maximum amount of money for something that you're selling because who you're selling it to, you have
like them, right?
a long-term relationship and you want them to have a good break. Okay, so that's income that you're not going to have to survive.
So you have to charge more so you can survive more.
Right.
I mean, if you want to give something away supposing you want to give away, for instance, supposing you have a woodlot.
The law wants you to get a...
This is a great example. Okay. You have a woodlot, and most of your neighbors don't have the woodlot, so you cut the wood down for firewood selectively, sustainably. And now you have excess wood. So you'd like to give it to the poorer people who can't afford to heat their home. And if you do that, if you give them the wood, you can't afford to pay your taxes on that property. So therefore you have to charge them. They can't afford it because the law is set up where you have to pay a certain amount of taxes. And then the tax structure is set up where you're only paying the very rich again, not the poor. So it's all based on the economy. Now I want to ask Dennis a question before we go a little further. Suppose in our economy, Dennis, our politicians would say, we have to change the laws to make it so everybody has a fair shot, a fair shake, that everybody has their basic needs met. And the politicians actually spend time legislating, getting rid of the laws that are benefiting the big corporations, and not getting rid of the corporations, but allowing them to function well, but making sure that all human beings have their basic needs met for a minimal amount of time that they have to spend at their job. Would you consider that a functional government or a dysfunctional government?
I think it would be more functional.
So therefore, the dysfunctional portion of the government is that it's not allowing people to have their basic needs met by law. Is that right?
Right. I can give you a good example, Jeff. We've already started, not food or shelter, but education. We do have the free grade school and the free high school. It's just that when it's time for college, that's what I was saying before. It is. You do understand, Jeff, that the cost, technology is moving forward so well that it would be less expensive to pay for that kid in college than to pay for that kid in kindergarten. Because the kid in kindergarten cannot go on the internet and learn anything. But the kid who graduated high school, and it doesn't matter what their master is, whether they want, a bachelor's or a master's degree or a doctorate degree, they can do 95% of that right on the internet and learn that. And all that you have to pay these instructors for is when it's time to take your test, they could say, okay, come on over and take your exam. Okay, then those instructors are getting paid. But 95% of that education can be done on the internet, even though a kid in kindergarten can't do that, but we already have free kindergarten and free.
Well, it's not really free, but you still got to pay the instructor. He's got to learn what he's instructing, so you got to he's got to get his basic needs met while he's learning, because he's got to live.
Oh, sure, I'm not saying we should not have.
So what you're saying, the problem is not so much the actual way we're doing stuff, but the way the economic system is running, because you have to go further when you say that. And the kindergarten through high school is not free. I know that I paid a fortune in taxes in just now in September. We just wrote a huge check for our schools, and everybody in this community did, for the education system. Then in January we have more taxes to pay for the roads and the maintenance of the roads and the salting and the plowing. And then we have to pay the power company to make sure the grid system's functioning. We have to pay for that. That means we have, and when I say pay for it, you need your life. Most people have to work. And when they work, they're using their lifetime up. Now, if you're very wealthy, you have income coming in without having to physically work. So you're not using your lifetime up. You're using your family's money, who invested or did whatever they did, and they left you the money, or you were very lucky to buy a certain amount of stocks that creates, that doesn't create anything, by the way, but it makes money on money, puts nothing physical back to the system, but you're benefiting by it. So you don't really have to worry about where your money comes from, because money's making money but putting nothing back to society. So I think stocks are a very bad idea. And if supposing, so what I'm just saying to you, that to get a functional government, we need to make sure the laws are made, the governmental laws are made to benefit humanity or benefit the population, not benefit the corporations, because it really doesn't trickle down like Mr. Reagan or President Reagan said. It only trickled down. The tax structure was, by some remote chance, benefiting the population. And the military now, you don't need a military. If every human being on the planet, and it's no longer 4 billion people, like Bucky said when he wrote the book, it's now 7 to 8 billion people. So, but the technology has grown amazingly well, so we can actually make sure all humanity working 1 hour a day, and there's plenty of work for 1 hour a day to get their basic needs met. Not the wants, but the needs. And you want more, you work harder. You don't need a minimum wage, which creates inflation. You don't need welfare, which is a stigma and also creates inflation. What you need is a living understanding that all humanity working 1 hour a day will have their basic needs met. Once we all agree to that, that's the start point. Then you can then allow the free market to really take effect. And that way you don't have to worry about a free kindergarten to first grade to college. It's automatically there. It's there because it's available, it's physical. Now, the next question somebody would ask me when I mention this stuff, we suppose and we say we need internet for everybody. In that case, because what you're saying, Dennis, is every human being can go online and have internet to get knowledge for no cost. That's what you're saying, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay, the next question is, how are we going to pay for that? That's what somebody...
You don't have to pay.
Well, you do have to pay. You're going to put internet in for every human being, like you have in your house now, and I have a lousier internet than you have, and I'd like to get a better internet, and there's certain parts of this world that doesn't have internet. You are physically paying for your internet probably $100 a month, but it doesn't matter. You have income coming in from your retirement that covers the cost of that, and so do I. But how does one pay for this stuff? Well, it's very simple. We print up internet money worldwide, and we pay the people who put the internet in to run it this internet money. And so, wow, that's going to create a lot of inflation. No, it doesn't, because the minute that money hits the bank, it gets immediately destroyed. So what you have then is people who put the physical internet in place so people can learn. And the bankers or the big money don't make the money on top of the money. But physically, we have a very smart worldwide population. Now, then the world population can understand how the system works, and if it's worthwhile keeping on having more and more children and depleting the planet of their natural resources, or they may figure out a better way to create more natural resources so the planet can keep on. I don't know. I don't have the answer. But I do know that you don't, by printing money to give you physical things and destroying the money does not create inflation. However, making money on money creates inflation. Putting in a minimum wage, man-made number, creates inflation. There's no reason why we can't work for zero money a day and have all the basic needs met. And again, figure out some kind of form of barter or IOUs that can allow people to work harder and have things they think they want, not what they need. their wants met. So what you're saying to me, go ahead, but let me clarify this. What you're saying to me is that you're saying to me that we should have free education for all. I'm saying to you, it's not free. It has to be paid for. But I'm saying to you, we just print up the money so it circulates so people can still live, physically put in the internet the way you think it should be, so everybody could have an education worldwide. And then once that money hits the banking system, so it doesn't inflate, it's destroyed. It's like a balloon. Build the balloon, set the physical balloons up in the air to help pick up the table or whatever. And then once the table's lifted and the balloon goes up in the air, it gets destroyed. We did not create inflation, but we picked up the table that we had to lift. And that's what was, I'm trying to make an analogy, which is, I don't know if I made it right. But do you see what I'm saying?
Well, yes, no, I hear you. It's just that we already have so many homes in this country that have the internet. I'm saying that.
What about the rest of the world?
So you can, just what you're saying, you can print money. How many billions of dollars or trillions have we already printed?
Doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything as long as we can conceive of the money, and we put that conception in the form of whatever physical paper or bitcoins, whatever you want to choose, and then it gets destroyed after the product is built. You then have a physical, suppose we all need homes, right? We all need physical shelter, right?
Right.
So if we just make sure we print money for physical shelter, the shelters are then built, and then that money, it says physical shelter on the dollar bill or the coin or the electronic transfer. Then that's destroyed as soon as that physical shelter is built. So you have left over the physical shelter that we all need, but you don't have the money, it's gone. And that way you didn't create the inflation. This is not a complicated concept. I mean, this is.
If that was the intent of the economics, and it is not.
That's okay.
That's the problem. It's not the intent of our economics.
Right.
And what has been building up, and we're talking about it in reference to Buckminster Fuller's book, Critical Path, where he's talking about what happened from World War I, the Great Crash, then World War II. All this has been building up to make things, the perception of artificial scarcity, the perception on the part of the public that they can't possibly understand what the Know-How Club is doing, and that's very important, and that science and technology be the exclusive playground of only the elites and the large corporations. Here, Buckminster Fuller is saying in 1929, at the time of the Great Wall Street crash, only about 1% of USA's big corporations had research departments. Now, half a century later, all the big corporations have all the powerful research departments, other than those in which pure scientists are engaged in academic work under some corporate or government subsidy. Through the national defense budget's armament development, all the once risky research and development costs of enterprise are paid for by the public through taxation. So we don't have to understand these things, but we definitely have to pay for them. And this has been arranged to happen either through universities that you can only attend if you have sufficient money to pay for your attendance there, or through the military, which is subsidized by our taxation. So here you've got the situation that we have now, and all the answer is, domination of the mines and the minerals and the know-how, and this is the goal all around the world. The corporations are not aligned with governments. They are aligned with their own motives.
To make money, and, to compete. And then the stockholders make more money, and then we compete on what stocks to buy, and then we compete upon how much money we can make, and then we sort of judge. Like I was talking to someone again the other day, and we were talking about how we judge our children. Look at the job they have. Look how much money they make.
Right.
When you look at this presidential candidate, I've got more money than them, so therefore I must be a very great human being.
I should get more attention.
And I have to get more attention because I can afford to buy you. This is outrageous, but this is the way our system is
That's
developed.
what's respected because that's what we've been trained to respect. And interesting to get to the other part of our summary where, how did the heck did the American banks get the dominance of the Arab banks? Well, when this domination of minerals and mines was going on, it was corporations that were essentially had been evolving in the United States and in Europe, and mostly in the United States. They had the know-how to also manipulate the world around infrastructure for the monies and the distribution of the oil products. And then all of a sudden in 1974, Saudi Arabia finds itself sitting on most of the reserves. It's just by accident of geography there. And they hadn't really been doing that much about it, but people were now buying it from them, and they were very content, with the elites in the country were being very well treated, fattened up, just like we fatten up our research scientists, a similar kind of thing, make them happy, make them the richest people, anything's possible. But unfortunately, the Arabs, quote, and this is Buckminster Fuller, had no knowledge of the vast industrial production and distribution, technical and administrative requirements, nor had they any experience in the exploitation of the world energy industry prior to their own land's exploitation by others before the onslaught of the petroleum company giants. The Arabs had not known how to discover, drill for, refine, and distribute the petroleum upon which they had been sitting unwittingly for thousands of years. So content were the Arab monarchs with the gratification of their every physical desire, artfully heaped upon them personally by the capitalist world's foreign oil exploiting functionaries, that they would never have taken over the direct mastery of their petroleum affairs had not the psycho-guerrilla warfare between the capitalist and the communist powers deliberately aroused the Arab peoples themselves, bringing pressure upon their leaders to take over the foreigners' operations. And so now they're a little puzzled. And in 1977, the king of Saudi Arabia said to a leading American banker with large oil interests, quote, "My banks don't know anything about international banking and major industrial accommodation," unquote. The American banker said, quote, "Would you like me to run your banks?" unquote. The king said, "Of course." So the American banker did, and in the process he taught them international and transnational industrial finance management. And so now we come to today. Of course the Arabs understand all this now and probably have taken back their banking control.
But that's
some of the background.
Of the small elites in the world.
Yes, and they are, of course, now a part of the club, the know-how club, the money club, whatever.
Right, and that's where the United Kingdom comes in again, where the United Kingdom are as Dennis calls them, the 1%ers or the 0.1%ers or whatever. We know that it's a small portion of the world population controlling all the population, the 7 billion people on the planet now. And it might grow. If you watch this program, if it happens to be up in 5 years from now, and I'm long dead, I'm saying 7 billion people. But as Bucky said, now he's long dead. He was 4 billion on the planet then. And we keep on raising slaves to keep on supporting the very wealthy. And eventually, the very wealthy can get rid of most of us because the technology is there to make sure that they live very comfortably without us useless eaters, and that's what they call us, useless eaters, in the way.
And here's actually a thought to part with. I think we've got a few more minutes. Oh, we've got 5 minutes.
We got 3.
When going back to lawyer capitalists and they're working for the big corporations, the corporate nations, I would like to call them, law cap, and this is Bucky's abbreviation, lawyer capitalists. Law caps, capitalism is paradoxically the most highly socialized organization in all history. The citizens of law cap's welfare state, the whole body of corporate stockholders, have an annual average dole of 100,000 per capita without their even having to make a pretense of getting a job. Okay.
They don't need to, they don't have to work.
No.
And by the way, none of it, because there's so much technology in the world, that's what we're saying. We really don't have to work other than what we want to do because of the technology. If we worked like hell to get Windows 10 on our computer yesterday, and a couple of days before on another computer, so we can do our programming with the best possible technology we could afford in our economic stratus. I'm sure that if you had more money, you can have a whole bunch of technicians working with you and have better technology and do it better without the echoing, without the setting up of the cameras, where you have more space to work in. But we do what we can with what we've got. But the technology is important. We really shouldn't have to work on anything but what we choose to do to help the society around us. I don't think that's a complicated issue.
And the irony is when the CIA Capitalisms Invisible Army deploys, it's supposedly encouraging democracy, but what it does is it sets different groups against each other, and this way fragmenting countries that they want to weaken. And what they're really doing is they're going in and making sure that socialism or any kind of facsimile that would be advantaging the majority of people in a country never takes hold, because by fragmenting people and making them suspicious of each other, and you can see how many factions there are in Syria now. It's so many armies. You're dividing them all, and nobody trusts anybody, and it's fear everywhere.
What did Bucky call the CIA?
The Capitalisms Invisible Army, and they're always working to destroy any possibility of any kind of coming together
Capitalism's Invisible Army.
And dignity for the majority of people in a country, for the larger.
Well, thank you all for listening. Dennis, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, Dennis.
Neighbors out of work because they closed the factory. You try to stretch your paycheck, but it's never quite enough. Oh, energy, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. Fossil fuel affects our lives like ripples on a lake. Cars and farms and factories and trucks. Supplies go down and prices soar, our futures are at stake. And when it's gone, it won't come back, and we'll be out of luck. Oh, energy, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. We can get our energy from corn and grass and trees.
Even trash converts to biofuels.
Break loose from the stranglehold of oil companies. Renewables can fuel the world. We're here to spread the news. Oh, energy, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy.
Tune in next Sunday.